Thank you for joining our Lunch and Learn for this month. Today we have our very, very special guest, Reynae Herrera. Thank you so much for being here, Reynae. This will be about student connection and engagement beyond elementary. So we're talking about how we can keep that momentum, that SEL momentum from the elementary and bring it to the secondary level. So we're really excited to hear about what's happening in Judson ISD. So as always, this is a time to connect with our Class Catalyst partners, to ask questions, to dig into best practices, and just learn from each other. So we really invite folks to, again, be vocal, ask questions, let us know. We'll keep our eye on the chat, or feel free to unmute, and then we'll think about what we should talk about next month. So I'll go ahead and pass it to the lovely Anne to lead us through a practice.
Hello, everybody. Thank you again for joining us. We have our mindful line drawing up on deck today, which is probably one of my favorites. It helps us with focus. It helps us to show what focus looks like, sounds like, and feels like. And it's something we can do with a very little prep, low to no tech, and we can bring it in our day, build stamina with it, and really show what it feels like in the body to stay focused. So we're going to need a pen and a paper, preferably a turquoise flare pen if one is around. No, any color you'd like. We've got another flare pen friend out there. And then once we get our pens moving, we're just going to keep it moving, so nonstop, and then they cannot intersect the lines. So the line cannot go through itself. So 2 things to focus on, that's all. It's going to be 1 minute. And so if you have had enough of me talking, giving you time to find your supplies, let's go ahead and get started. We're going to raise our pens. We're going to take it to the paper. And again, keep it moving, and it does not intersect itself. So please go ahead and begin. There's our minute. Please feel free to show what you did. These are some of the most fun to share with students. They always look so different. So feel free to bring this time when the day needs us to bring ourselves a little bit more together and be ready to move on with all the important things we have to share, which we have some very important things to share today. And we would like to thank everybody for joining us, and let's give it a big round of applause for Reynae Herrera, the one and only super counselor from Judson School District in San Antonio. You are amazing, and we love everything you and your district and team do for us. Thank you kindly.
Well, welcome everybody. Thank you for joining us. I wanted to give a little bit of a background of what Judson ISD looks like. We are a unique district. We're one of the districts in the San Antonio area. One of the things that I think makes us unique is we have a wide variety of schools. So we have, as you can see, 20 elementary schools, 5 middle schools, 3 comprehensive traditional high schools, but then we also have an early college high school, a non-traditional high school, and then we also have an alternative campus. We, in our department, which is the Student and Family Support Services Department, we have roughly 103 counselors and social workers that make up our district. We also have somebody that focuses on McKinney-Vento, foster care, also school age parenting. We also have somebody that focuses and works with our military families. The other thing that I think makes Judson unique is that our district falls within 7 different municipalities. So San Antonio is not the only municipality, but we have some smaller municipalities that Judson falls within.
So we have been partners for, I'm trying to remember, when did we start? When did we start? It has been such a long time. I feel like ever since I've been with Mindful Practices, we've been
I want to say maybe 2019, somewhere around there. We started with a couple of pilot schools
Mhm.
that first year. And then after we kind of went full force with our entire district
Yeah,
for the
yeah.
pilot.
So that was pre-pandemic, right? And that was,
Yes.
it was, I remember, yeah, in just a couple of the elementary schools. And you all were one of the first districts where to actually pilot Class Catalyst. And it's come such a long way.
Yes, yes, it has. And
Yeah.
our plan, I think, has evolved kind of over time. What we did in COVID, I think this was really helpful. But we also, I think, if you remember, had to kind of pivot during those time periods because not all of our kids had computers. So as we were getting them onto computers, we also had some paper that y'all kind of created for us. I'm not sure if you remember that, that had like a little check-in that parents could do with their kids as well.
Absolutely. Yeah, I do remember that. Yeah. So how do you feel like things have gone since that time into where we are now?
So I think, our biggest kind of challenge is like we are talking about right now, which is secondary. Our elementaries are, I think it was, I don't want to say easy, but I think it came a little bit more natural to implement because they could do it in the morning with the kids could log on it and go on to Class Catalyst in the morning. They're not switching classes, other than specials and some of the upper grades, like fourth and fifth grade, split some classes. So it made it easier. I think now we kind of had to take a step back and we put a lot of focus on our middle schools. Our middle schools have an advisory period. It doesn't necessarily always fall in the morning. It's our campuses have it at different times during the day. And so it's made kind of that time, what we would call like our cell time for them to implement Class Catalyst. So that really helped a lot. I think, we sometimes are still struggling with our high school. And it's just like, it's because academic time is so precious. And so we have some that are doing it, but for the most part, it's still a little bit of a challenge for us.
Yeah, and that's something that we hear a lot, right? And that's why we're kind of here talking about it because especially with middle school and high school when schedules are sort of all over the place, right? And we think about when we even squeeze in a little bit of time to support well-being in SEL. Um,
Mhm,
and it's not even the schedules, but also I think it's the kind of staff when they're so academic focused, right? And
mhm.
they're like, oh, my kids have so much to do, right? So how do you kind of shift that mindset for staff to say, hey, slow down and let's take care of something else for a minute?
Yeah, I think, with middle school, it did start a little bit giving us that knowing that there was a dedicated time that wasn't always, specific to math, English, they use that for various different things. Sometimes it is tutoring or catch up, but I think once we got teachers into kind of a routine and once they realized, the burden wasn't necessarily on them, that all they had to do was say, okay, class, let's do our Class Catalyst check-in. That made it easier. And then once the teachers kind of get into that routine and I feel like that helped a little bit. Like I said, we're not quite there with our high school. I think the other thing that made us kind of have to take a step back, our high school for the last, I think it was 4 years, were on what was called a 5 by 5. And so the kids or the students had classes, they only had 5 classes a day. And those 5 classes, so some of them were longer periods. Well, we switched back to a traditional high school schedule of 7 classes. And so that's been an adjustment with the teachers. And so with that, that also meant that class time was reduced. And so we had to kind of shift. We're still looking, kind of for innovative ways to show them the benefits. And I feel like because our counselors also go in there and teach their monthly guidance lessons, they're seeing that as well. And so this is kind of like an extension of something else that the students can do to, increase their awareness and, their SEL skills.
Yeah, and I think that you all you're implementing Class Catalyst in kind of different ways than some of our other partner districts, where you have the counselors and the social workers like really be the leaders in the building to
Mhm.
support staff. And also, I think checking the data every day, right? We see that a lot of your counselors are responding to kids in the platform, kind of making sure that somebody has an eye on what they're writing and making sure they're feeling seen and heard.
Mhm.
How do you like? How did your counseling team? How did you get them motivated to kind of push things along?
So I think again for elementary it was easy, that kind of falls real natural. And I think with secondary it was just that encouragement. It was also the support that y'all gave them, the office hours, them being able to contact you guys when there was, a glitch or something, and the response was so quick, so that made it, easier. I also think um we share data with them. And so when they see the data, like I think in January when we showed them, the first few months, they were like kind of, I think, surprised and realized like now I have to follow up too. Like I trained the teachers, I showed the teachers, where the students log in. But if it was a campus that maybe didn't see as high usage, then, they were able to go back and say, hey, do you need any help? Is something not working, with the teachers? And so we saw like an increase there, because we're sharing that data, and just sharing, like I think sometimes the counselors will share stories about the benefits and things like that. Or like you said, when they go onto the dashboard and they see a note and the student gets that response, because they feel like, oh, somebody cares about me, somebody actually read it. That's also that feedback that they get, that kind of helps that, this is helping the students.
Yeah, that's great. I actually was curious if, like, because I know that we do share, right, like monthly snapshots. So you send that usage to your whole counseling team every month. Is that what you all do?
Yes,
And
yes.
you fit
It's
like
not every month, but yeah, we do share it.
great like throughout the school year. Okay, yeah. And it doesn't feel like, oh, these schools are underperform. I don't want to say underperforming, but maybe have like lower check-ins. Like, do they ever push back at all because of maybe lower usage, things like that?
I don't know that they push back. I think they just like, again, at some of our secondary campuses, they realize like it's hard. And they know we know that. So, and we don't ever want to make it, like it's a got you. It's just like, hey, this is your usage, check in with your teachers, see, is there something I can do to support you? Or is there something that, we need to reach out to, either Vienna or Ann, to provide that support as well. And then letting the teachers know that, they can also contact you guys directly, if they need that support.
Awesome. Yeah. We love your counselors. They're so great. I mean, we just appreciate them so much. Um, what about your students? Anything that you're hearing from your students when it comes to SEL, well-being, implementation? Any thoughts there?
Well, I want to take us back. I want to say it was maybe 2 years ago when y'all came in and you met with some of our students and they got feedback. And I know like right after that, like our students just loved that because again, it gave them a voice to say, what the platform they loved about it, what maybe needed to be changed a little bit, which I thought was great.
Mhm.
Even with our counselors, we've given you guys some feedback about things like, is it possible to maybe get alerts, differently from when those kids, write the notes and things like that. So I always feel like the students like that because that gives them that voice and what I say matters and is important. But I think just hearing students that or when you see sometimes the students that log on not at the normally scheduled time, like if they log in over a break or if they log in maybe a couple of times during the day, for us that's we know then they value that and that it's helping that they enjoy being able to check in and learn some of those techniques, depending on what their mood and how their energy level is.
Awesome. Yeah. And I know, sometimes some of our, it's funny because the staff member, I think, they think like, oh, well, Class Catalyst, maybe it's more for younger students, right? Like SEL is more geared towards younger ones. But really, when we're thinking secondary level, right? Like middle school, high school, even adults, I think we need it too, right? To take that breath, that practice that self-awareness, practice some self-regulation strategies. We know that, building that relationship, especially at the high school level and middle school level, I mean, it's
Mhm.
crucial, right? To that success in the classroom and just that climate and culture. So yeah, that's
Yeah,
something that I was thinking about.
and I think that, you said it correctly. If we can get the teachers to realize that, allowing for this time, giving the students that opportunity to practice these skills, um, also helps build that relationship because it shows them, that this is important. And we know that students perform better when they have a relationship with their teacher.
That's why we appreciate you all so much because at the like to hear it from the district level saying this is important, we're doing it, right? Like
Mhm.
I've heard Monica say that in like the background in a meeting, like, oh no, you're doing it. um, Sometimes like we just need that, right? We need that leadership. We
Mhm.
always want, and that's like our job, right? Anne and I are trying to like show the value of Class Catalyst and show the value of that connection piece for staff to help them get motivated to use it and to really engage in it. But we also need that leadership to say, we're going to prioritize this.
Mhm.
So let's work together to figure it out. So
Yeah.
lots of puzzle pieces there. And anything else, that we're thinking about or missing? Any questions?
I just love the importance that's been placed on that feedback part where we can have students giving those messages to teachers. Teachers can bring them back because there's so many times our students don't want to speak it out loud. Like maybe it's
Mhm.
hard to say out loud, or maybe they're too shy to say it out loud, but it really allows us to get a peek behind the veil that is middle schoolers. Because we know that they either come up with this grumpy facade that really isn't them, and inside they feel like I really love it here, and they can type that out. No, that's good to know. Or they can come in with this happy facade and they're really hurting inside. It gives them that chance to get that agency, that belonging. Like, yes, somebody here is going to be able to know what I need to say. And that space is there to do it. And I just love it. And I love that your students are using it and your teachers are seeing it, because it can it can be very impactful and possibly even save some big trauma from happening.
And we also tell, even our littles, we're always telling the teachers, like, I know it's hard for them to sign on, but here's other options, like, or letting the teachers know, like, if you see your whole class is coming in maybe from recess and they're not settling down and you want them focused and ready to learn, like, here are some videos that you can use, that are going to be age appropriate to kind of get them to calm back down, focus, and ready to learn.
That's what I love about that SEL calendar that we have in place, where teachers they don't even need to go search the video library. If they're like, oh, I need something right now, they can pull that up and it's already highlighted per grade band what they need, what could help the most. So I'm glad they're using that too.
Yeah, and we put that in our newsletter, so that it's, easy to access for them as well.
That's awesome. That's awesome. I've heard some teachers that they're using Google Classroom, they're putting links to some of the videos, even though they expire in 2 weeks, but then they get that parent involvement too. Because then
Mhm.
you get to see exactly what it looks like that students are doing. So
Mhm.
that's awesome that they're using the calendar like that.
Mhm.
Any other questions just to open it up to the group here? Any questions for Reynae while we still have her?
What advice would you give to somebody a district that's just starting out one that's just starting out, period, and then one that's just starting to move towards their secondary students?
Um, I think what I would say is, like, maybe pilot with people or a campus maybe that's really excited about it or feels like this is something, that they already have that buy-in. And then, just be willing to, like, put a plan together of how they're going to implement, but then also recognize that, like us, we had to realize that, yes, we went all in, but we had to kind of pull back from our high schoolers and kind of focused, we got our elementary going and stuff, but then we had to kind of put our focus, with our middle schoolers because that time was there and it made it easier. So, you know, don't don't look at if you get setbacks as a failure. It's just a way to grow in a way, that you have to kind of pivot, be flexible in what may work, and what you have to adjust. And we're always asking our counselors, you know, what would help them? What do your teachers need for support? So I think that communication also helps as well.
That servant leader just shines out of you. I just love it. Thank you. Another question that we have that we like to ask everybody before we end our time together is like, what stresses you out? What would you like to see coming up in the future that can help you with one of these lunch and learns that we can ask somebody who's using Class Catalyst to bring to the table?
I mean, I think it's just our high schoolers, like what strategies maybe did they use that we hadn't thought about? And I think I forgot to mention like our early college, again, like that population, those kids, we were able to get in, and they were able to use it a lot because they have a dedicated time. It's not every day, but they have a dedicated time where it's not solely on academics. I mean, some of it is, but yeah, if there's any high schools that, what did they do or what? Because I'm always, I'm like you guys, the SEL isn't just for kids. It's for everybody. And I think anytime I learn something, I'm thinking, oh, that is a good way to help us focus, like what we did today. And I feel like kids are the same way, but we need to give them an opportunity, to practice in different ways. Like some kids are going to want to practice privately. So this could be a good option for them. Or if they're not even doing it when the video's on, maybe they'll take that back and learn it by themselves, or practice when it's more private. So yeah, I think that's my biggest thing, with academics just being such a focus, and of course testing and scores and things like that are always a focus. But, I always think, kids need this in order to be able to perform better. So yeah, if there's any strategies that maybe somebody was able to get that buy-in from the teachers and what they did, I think that would be great too.
That's wonderful. I love how you talk about planting those seeds, or they're taking these practices. You may not see them doing it right in the moment, and that's a high schooler, but they're planting that seed where maybe they're in a conflict later or they're feeling emotions later and it blooms and they're able to then.
Yeah, and I think the only other thing would be like just, finances. I'm sure, as you guys know, everybody, is always struggling with that, and that's always a challenge. And so, what maybe that could be a topic, how did people get creative in being able to support, curriculum and support SEL practices.
I love that idea. How to use grant funds to, what can we apply to Title IV, Title II, to all the titles, and what fits where. I think that would make a great one. Good idea.
Yeah, these are great ideas. Thank you, Reynae, for that. And thank you for, again, just sharing the awesome work that's going on in your district. We are so grateful for our partnership, and yeah, we look forward to continuing it together.
Yes. Well, thank you for having me. I appreciate it.
Thanks, everyone. Have a great one.